field house?
It was ridiculous.
I'd like to call the Joint Village Board and Finance and Personnel Committee meeting to order. Roll call for, please.
Village Board members, Trustee Allison Williams.
Present.
Trustee Paul.
Present.
Trustee Zerbal.
Here.
Trustee Mark Williams.
Here.
Trustee Bukowski.
Here.
Trustee Malcheski.
Here.
President Kardasky.
Here.
For Finance and Personnel members, Trustee Williams.
Here.
Trustee Zerbal.
Here.
Trustee Malcheski.
Here.
Mr. Doska.
Present.
Mr. Selk.
Present.
All present and accounted for, Madam
Thank you.
President.
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And please remember all our men and women in uniform throughout the world. Okay, I have no changes to the agenda.
Move to approve. Second.
Motion and a second to approve the agenda as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Number 4, action. 4A, discussion and possible action on annual salary of the elected official salaries for Clerk Treasurer, Municipal Court Judge, and Village President. Allison.
These 3 positions are up for election in spring, so we have to establish the salaries prior to their terms of office, so now would be the time to do that. With respect to the Clerk Treasurer, I have the salary in there. We've done a little bit of research in terms of where those salary ranges are. It's generally around 68 to 71. So there's some outliers up into that 85 or low 80,000 range, but we are well below that. So my personal recommendation, the board can do what it will, and the clerk has not swayed or participated in this conversation, but would be to recommend a 2.25% increase for each of the 3 years for that term of office. And then on the municipal court judge, we did do an increase on that previously, and that is in line or above other comparable positions in the area. And then with respect to the village president indicated she does not support such a request to adjust that salary.
Okay, any comments?
Well, I know that we've, on the village clerk treasurer position, we have not increased that over the past few years. And with where we're at in there, I think that 2.25 is okay, but I think that we should try to make a little bit of that up, I guess. And I think I would be in favor of at least that, maybe a 2.5% increase per year.
Okay.
Looking at what you did, Mark, I would definitely approve something of that nature to go for that 2.5 or in that area.
Well, I think that we have done a good job of keeping people not at the minimum, not at the maximum, and I think this budget reflects that. So I would be in favor of giving the clerk treasurer, because it's full-time. And the fact that it's elected should not make a difference. So I would propose that we take a flat sum this year, not all the way up to the minimum, but I would, I'm not making a motion, but I would suggest that we kick that up, the clerk treasurer's, by about $3,000, and at least get him. And then if you wanted to go 2.25 the last 2 years, or the second and third year, I'd be fine with that. But I don't think we should be that far below the minimum of comparable communities who have full-time clerk treasurers. We want good people.
What is, I don't have that paper in front of me.
Oh, I'm sorry, what'd you say?
What is the salary right now?
Right now, it's $62,740.
And what's the minimum?
And $67,700. So it's like almost, it's about $5,000 below the minimum. The maximums are $85,000. We don't want to go there, obviously, but I do think that we should be fair with people. And so,
But I mean, just to clarify a couple things, so just,
where are we?
there
Oh,
were
down there.
previous, we did, when we consolidated the position, there was some increases of 1.5% in the last 3 years, so I just don't want to mislead you that we haven't done anything, but it's still warranted. In calculating the 2.25%, at the end of the 3 years, you'd be at $67,111, so you'd probably still be short at the end of that. So rather than maybe talking about percentages, maybe you want to talk about round dollar figures where you want to be at for the next 3 years. You do have the ability to just say this is what the number should be, and that might be easier for us to calculate than trying to back into where you want to be with percentages.
I did quick calculation, 2.25% of his current salary is only $14.11. After 3 years, that doesn't get us up to 67, does it?
I'll do it again.
Compounded. No, it's not.
It'd be
40, roughly 4,500 plus the 62. So we'd still be short of what the minimum is today, let alone 3 years from now.
Right. Well, I get to 67,000 and some change after of doing 2.25% each of the 3 years.
Okay, all right, you're adding,
Every-
yeah. I got you,
compounding.
yeah. I just did it once.
But
yeah.
you're right, it's still short.
Right.
That gets us to where you should be this year, not 3 years from now. So
Okay.
that's why I'm saying, rather than talking about percentages, it might be easier if you just tell us the dollar thresholds where you want to be.
3 years.
Because I quickly ran 3%, and that doesn't quite get you there either. So
You don't quite what?
if I ran it at 3%, you're not adding a ton more. If I ran it at 3%, it gets you a few more $100 this year, but it's still
Not getting-
64,600 roughly. So you're not really getting, I'm not sure what your goal is. It sounds like you're trying to get to at least to that 67 mark. But what I'm hearing is you might want to be closer to the 67 mark for 2019. Again, this goes into effect May
That'd get us
1st.
close to 7.
So it would be a partial year. And then the following May 1st would be the next increase, and then the following year. So it just depends on how you want to break that up.
Well, it depends upon how we want to perk that up for those 3 segments of pay increase.
And I'm giving you salaries for 2018. So
These,
you're already a year behind technically in terms of your discussion.
whatever these increases are, if there is any increases, there's not included in this budget we're about to go over.
Clerk, you have at 2.25.
The clerk is currently at 2.25%, but we do have some budgeted in a wage reserve, which would help accommodate any other changes.
What was the last part of your comment?
We have money, we always budget a little bit of money in what's called a wage reserve
Oh, okay.
to account for
I
these
see.
types of situations.
Okay, I got you. Well, I'll make a motion that, excuse me, we go $2,000 a year for the 3 years. That would be $6,000, which would take them up to $68,700. That's probably still gonna, by the time 3 years is up, it'll stop, probably still be below the minimum, but at least that would get him closer to what he is now. $5,000 behind.
How far is that going to be behind when we get up to
Well,
the,
that's the thing, we don't know.
Well, I think on average, minimums and maximums go up 2 to 3% every year, right?
The trend previously has been 2%. This year, consumer index was at about 2.25, so it bumped up a little bit from what it's been in the past. Just to give you comparable salaries, 2018 in Alloway was $68,991. Mount Pleasant was $70,380. De Pere is $71,000. So to kind of just give you ballpark of where some local comparable communities are in 2018.
Okay, I'm going to make a motion, I'm sorry, I'll make a motion, that we increase the clerk treasurer's salary by $2,500 per year for the next 3 years.
2,500?
One at a time? That,
Okay.
2,500.
Okay,
I'll second it.
okay. I'll agree to that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to increase the clerk treasurer salary, $2,500 a year for 3 years. Is Is everybody,
So that brings us to about 69 or so?
Roughly, yeah.
Okay.
60, would be 70,200 something
At the end of the three.
at the end of the 3 years.
So what Ken is proposing is essentially a 4% increase the first year. But then from a percentage point, because it's a fixed dollar amount, it's going to diminish in year 2 and 3.
Right.
Whereas your competitive forces probably are going on a percentage basis. So you may end up with the same problem by converting to dollars versus
Percent.
percentage.
So you're saying percentage would be a correct way of going to get them to the average pay then?
Well, we
I
don't know
think
who
you have a
that
greater
position is going to
likelihood
be,
of
first
achieving
of
what
all.
you're trying to do.
Right, okay.
Well, make a motion,
I
John.
thought that we had a motion and
We
a
have a
second.
motion on, we have a
I'm
motion
sorry,
on
we
the
have a
floor.
motion and a second, right.
Okay, should we, do you want further discussion, or would you like to vote on that motion?
Yeah, let's vote.
Okay, let's vote on that motion. All those in favor of the motion of $2,500 per year for 3 years? Say aye.
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 Opposed?
No.
No.
Could you raise your hand, the nose? Thank you.
Okay,
I thought you said you could go along with that, Gary.
Pardon?
I thought you said you could go.
I like the 4%.
Oh, I'm sorry, okay.
That's the
Yeah,
only
all right.
reason. I like what you said, Ken. I'm
Okay.
not disagreeing, but
All
I
right.
like the 4% because it brings them up
All right.
a little bit closer.
That's fine, okay.
I'll make a motion that we remain the president and the judge wages stay the same for the next election.
When are you up again, Mary?
April,
Next April? Mm-hmm. That's a 4-year term?
3,
3-year term?
yeah.
So your motion would be
Keep
leave it
it the
at
same.
30,000 throughout the three-year term?
Both of them.
Yep, right. So Mary, the president would stay at 30 and the municipal court judge would stay at 23 for 3 years. How long is the municipal judge?
4.
4 years or 3?
4.
4 years, 4 years?
Which is why, that's why I came tonight. 4 years is a long time.
It sure is.
Well, it is, I mean, locked in, it would be actually 5 years to be locked in. It went to 23 in May of this year. So it's at 23 for this year, and then you'd have 4 more years, so you'd have 5 years without.
What,
That's the only point I wanted to make. And I do not quarrel for the position and based on what's happening in other communities with the level that it's at now, 23,000 per year. But 5 years is a long time to be fixed.
True. We don't have a second, so.
Why don't we take them one at a time? Why don't you?
yeah,
let the village
take them,
president-
I would take them one at a time.
Go ahead with the village president.
Okay,
or either one.
I'll make a motion that we leave the village president the same as it is currently for the next 3 years.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to leave the village president the same wage as it is right now for the 3-year term. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
1 no. Okay, now the municipal judge is
All right.
23,010 cents.
Well, we could knock off the 10 cents for sure. I will, before Mark makes a motion, I will move that we keep the salary of the municipal court judge for the same as it is for the first 2 years of his term, and the third and fourth year, increase it by $2,000. In other words, it would go to $25,000 and stay that way for the final 2 years of his term. So it'll be 23, 23, 25, 25.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to leave the judge's salary at 23,010 cents for the first 2 years, and then After that, it increases by 2,000, which would be 25,010 for the last 2 years. Does everybody understand that motion? Okay, any discussion?
I'm just curious, Ken, why do it that way instead of, yeah, 1,000 a year or percentage base
Yeah.
per year? Just kind of
I'm
curious.
sorry, about what?
Wondering why you want to set it up that way instead of just a flat, say 1,000 a year or a percentage increase per year.
Well, it's just clean. To me, it's cleaner. When you set us up, I don't have a problem with 1,000 a year. If you want to vote no and make that motion, I would support that, but
It's the same dollar amount then, right?
it's a fixed dollar
Yeah,
amount.
same
This
amount.
is, yeah.
Yeah. I would say 1,000 a year would be a little more justifiable.
I mean, I'm not that I'm
right with that?
against it, just curious the thought process. on it.
Excuse me if I can just interrupt for a moment.
Okay, we have legal counsel advice.
I've been doing some research here while this has been being discussed, and I'd have to look at it a little bit further, but I think there is an issue as far as doing a percentage or divvying it up with respect to a salary for any elected official during its specified term. There's a statute that seems to indicate that it should be a fixed salary amount for that entire term. And so instead of divvying it up and dividing it like you've been talking, whether it's percentage or fixed, to kick in at a later date, I think there may be an issue with that. So really, it should be just a fixed salary for that specific term is what the statute that I'm looking at seems to indicate. And I can look into that further, but I just wanted to make a notation of that.
May I comment on that? We ran into that, at the beginning of this 4-year term. There's a little bit of history here. We had gone for about 4, 5, maybe even 6 years where the judge's salary was never changed. It was just left alone. And it was supposed to go on your budget agenda 4 years ago, 5 years ago, when my current 4-year term was running out and the new term was approaching. It didn't get on the agenda. I won't go into the history of why, it just didn't get there. So you decided to increase the muni judge salary by a certain dollar amount each year for 3 years. You can't do it during the first year of, if you have the salary at 23,000, somebody gets elected to the position, then during the first year of that 4-year term, you can't change the salary. It's kind of a carve-out for the muni judge thing, just so you know. And then for years 2, 3, and 4, you could increase it, and that's what you did last time because there was an oops, where it was missed.
Okay.
That's how you got there.
Okay.
So you can do different amounts per year
In year 2, 3, and 4.
in years 2, 3, and 4, but you can't change it after the election for the first year. I couldn't get elected in April. I couldn't get elected in April, and then you would bump the salary to 24 in May. You can't do that.
Right.
No, but we can do it now.
But you can do it now.
Yes.
At 1,000 a year. That is more your 2,000.
Well, Tony, the statute, it's been a long time since I looked at that statute, but it used to be, and it might have changed, obviously, I've been retired for 15 years, but you could not decrease a salary during an elected official's term, that's clear. But you could, before nomination papers were out with that office, for example, December 1st
Yes.
for you and Mary?
Everybody.
Okay, as long as we do it before December 1st of this year, we can, it used to be, now it may have changed, we can do whatever we want for the next, every year for the next 4 years.
Ken, that's why when you missed me the last time around,
Yeah.
we had to leave it alone during the
Okay, yeah, all right,
So the
okay.
motion is relevant that you made.
I think we're okay, yes, yes.
Okay, it's okay, Tony?
There, I'm just looking at the municipal court salary statute, which I believe is consistent with what the judge indicated. So there is that carve out for the first year, and you cannot decrease the salary during the term as well.
So, I don't know if this is the right time to ask it, but then do we need to amend what we just determined for the clerk?
Different statute.
Different statute?
Was that, did that motion pass?
Yes,
For the
Yeah,
clerk?
okay. Yes, I believe then we should go back and revisit that motion with respect to the clerk. It's different for the judge, and I was trying to figure it out. There's a lot of cross-references and trying to figure it out.
but isn't it true, if we do it before nomination papers are available, which would be December 1st, for you too? For everybody, you're running in April.
The three of them.
Okay, then I thought we could do it, as long as we do it before nomination papers are out, we could set the salary for the term, and increase it every year.
That, you have to set the salary before nomination
Right.
papers.
But it could be
The-
increased,
The problem it becomes is that, say, cost of living increases seem to be prohibited for the elected officials, which would be different than, say, other employees. And so by divvying it up like that, the statute seems to indicate that you set a fixed salary. And that fixed salary is set for the entire term. So the 4-year term, you'd set the salary for that term instead of dividing it up.
it's gotta be the same salary each year?
Yes.
No, that's a change.
That's what it appears to be. I mean, I have to do some more
Yeah,
research
yeah.
on it,
That's a
but
change, because we used to be able to do it, increase it during the term, as long as you did it before nomination papers were available. But it could have changed.
It's not the same all 4 years.
and that's correct. The judge is different. There's a different statute for the judge, which talks about salary increasing before the start of the second.
Well, let's
or
take care of this one then before we go back after
Okay.
the clerk.
Okay, so we can increase the judges, so the,
The last 2 years, we could increase it by $2,000 to 25, okay.
right, okay, so everybody understands that motion?
No.
No.
It's clear as mud.
You
huh?
lost me along the way someplace.
Okay,
It's,
go ahead.
the motion is to keep the salary at 23,000 for the first 2 years of the term, then followed by the amount of 25,000 for the second 2 years of the term. That
For the
seconded by-
second 2 years.
Yes.
Yep. Seconded
Okay.
by trustee
Okay,
Milczewski.
okay.
And we cannot do the 1,000.
Well, we have to vote on this one first. If this motion would fail, then somebody else could bring that motion.
The question is, can we do that? Can we do the 1,000 a year?
Yes,
I don't believe that you can increase it until the second year
right.
under the statute. So if you did 1,000 a year, you wouldn't be able to do it for the first.
All right, Tony, if a fella, if you made a motion of $1,333, the second, third, and fourth year, that would be legal,
Yes,
to get them to the 4,000 that we'd like to give.
yes.
There.
Okay, but we need to vote on this motion first,
Okay, go.
okay?
Well, before we vote, and I hate to ask this question, but are you going to propose that then, what you just suggested?
I'll propose
If
that,
if this motion loses?
if this
Okay,
motion.
all right, thank you.
Okay, so,
Oh,
okay. The motion is, for the first 2 years, the judge's salary would be $23,010. And then the second 2 years, it would be $25,010. Okay? Everybody understands?
I didn't think that was motion. I thought it's a 4-year term,
Correct.
right? So I thought your motion was the first 2 years of the same, and then the next 2 years, you just did it over 3 years?
Nope,
Just to
nope.
clarify, so we have-
Nope, the motion
You're leaving
was,
the last 2 years the same.
the last 2 years are the
Okay.
same, the first 2 years are 23, the last 2 are 25.
right.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No. Okay, that motion fails.
All right, I'll make a motion to approve the raise for the second and third and fourth year for $1,333.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to leave the first year's salary for the judge, $23,010, and in year 2, 3, and 4 to increase each year by $1,333. Okay, any more discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay,
On the clerk treasurer, I will make a motion to reconsider that, what we did.
Second.
okay, we have a motion and a second to reconsider
What?
the clerk treasurer because
Oh.
we can't do it that way from what we've been looking up. Okay, all those in favor of reconsidering that, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
All right, now I would like to make a motion to set the clerk treasurers aside until our meeting on November 27th, so we can get a firm reading from our village attorney on what we can and can't do for the clerk treasurer. I want to be on firm grounds, whichever way we go, I want to be on firm grounds. So I would move to table this until our November meeting, the clerk treasurer part of it.
Okay. Do we have a second on that?
I'll second the set aside.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to table the clerk treasurer's salary until the final budget hearing, which is November 27th. Everybody understand that?
Need to use.
I just want to know what's unclear about it.
Tony doesn't think that we are able to increase that salary throughout the 3 years.
There seems to be an issue as far as whether you can do a step-by-step approach, whether it's a fixed amount of, say, 1,000 for 4 years or a percentage, because cost of living and automatic salary adjustments are only allowed for non-elected positions. And so the issue is whether you have to set a fixed salary of, say, let's, for discussion purposes, just say 70,000 for the 4 years as opposed to increasing it by X amount of dollars or X percent for that 4 years.
Okay.
Okay?
All right.
And you said, Mike, you think I have to use the word set aside?
Side rather than table, because you'd have to bring, either way, you're going to have to bring that motion back, one off the table, but if you set aside, it's easier to do it that way.
Okay, so we need to set aside this issue until the November 27th budget meeting. Everybody understand?
I'm not opposed to what we did. I just want to make sure we're
That we
on
are
good
doing
ground.
it legally.
That's all, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Okay. Did you have something to say? I have no idea. But that's an extra dime for your cup of coffee.
Oh, that was about 10 years ago. You were crying like crazy, so we threw in a dime. I think that's what it was.
It's a rounding,
Okay.
it's a rounding issue, because of the bi-weekly pay period.
Okay. 4B, 2019 budget review. First of all, before we start the budget review, I'd like to thank all the department heads, Allison and Greg, for working so hard on this budget. You know, we had a reevaluation this year in the village, and I think our budget comes out great. Pretty much keeps everything flat, and it's a good budget, so. Floor is yours, Greg.
All right, thank you, Mary. I also would like to thank staff, especially for their hard work. It's a difficult time of year when we start the budget. Summer's in full bloom. Park and Rec's extremely busy. Public Works extremely busy. In fact, everyone's extremely busy. So this is an add-on to their normal day-to-day. So much appreciated. It's not an easy process, but it's a great group of people who work really well together, who have really over the years learned to see the whole picture and are willing to
Bless you.
make sacrifices as needed for the betterment of the whole. So it makes my job a lot easier, but so I thank them for all their time and efforts in the process as well. So with that said, you have before you the budget as proposed. There's a variety of ways that we can do this, that we have done this in the past. The budget document itself is much the same as we've provided in past years. We've had in years where we've gone page by page. We've had years where we've just asked questions and kind of bounced around. So I guess it's really up to you how you want to go through it. I can give you a brief overview of the general fund, some of the highlights, and we can go from there. So I'll start there, and then if you have questions at any point or concerns, we can bounce around. The general book, as you have it, it's a table of contents, so we find it's a lot easier to reference page numbers, and then everybody can kind of follow along. There's different tabs in your book, but the page numbers seem to work the best.
Greg, I just want to interrupt you for 1 minute, just because I did the presentation of our checkbook for what the village taxpayer pays to each department. And it just floored me when I saw this, because one of the most important services that we always offer in the village, of course, is snow plowing. And on an average $158,600 home, for the snow removal for the year, the resident would pay $8.54. That's like 75 cents a month to have your roads plowed. That just floored me, and I just think that's wonderful. So, okay.
Good. Yeah, and that's a very effective graph chart to show. So it breaks down the services, and we'll get to there. The general levy as a whole. So what we did this year was a little bit different than normal years with the market revaluation. So we had a lot of moving parts with the assessed values in the village. But as a whole, through the whole process, our budget, we were able to actually reduce our levy $128,224. So we are actually levying $12,548,221 this year. And for the municipal tax rate will come in, as we're proposing, at $5.62 per thousand. Last year we were at $6.12, so it's a 50-cent reduction. The idea was to, as directed by the village president, was to hold taxes steady. So what that meant this year is take someone who had a property valuation that would have no reason to change, but yet everyone's changed with the market revaluation, and basically calculate a tax rate where that person would write the same dollar amount for a check. So people's assessed values went up, the tax rate would go down an equivalent basis, so that person's check to the village of Ashwaubenon would be the same amount. So that's kind of how we got to that 50-cent reduction. Obviously, there are people that have reasons for other valuation changes within their property, so it's a never perfect science for all people, but as a whole, that's how we do that. And as Mary alluded to, the average taxpayer home in the village from the assessor's office is $158,600. So that person would pay, if that would have been the equivalent of last year, they would again write another check for $891 to the village. And the listing on page 2 walks through all the different services. So snow removal is $8.54. All of your just public works, road work, all the maintenance, all of the other work that crew does, curb and gutter, the engineering work, the guys in the garage, the mechanics, all of that goes into public works, you're paying just under $94 a year. It's just incredible. When you break it down by these pieces, you can see how it plays out. Our tax rate as a whole on page 1, if you go back, there's a 10-year graph showing you where we've been. 10 years ago, we were at $4.60 per thousand. This year, we're at $5.62. However, since 2014, we have the referendum project in there. So we like to break out the tax rate to show you, here's what out of the total $5.62, 69 cents of that is referendum related. So had that not passed, we would only have a $4.93 tax rate. So when you think of over a 10-year period, a 33-cent difference is quite remarkable, considering our service levels have not gone down. In fact, they've gone up. This budget we were able to propose a new position within this budget. We added an additional $25,000 to our annual mill pave road construction, and able to maintain all of our services and adjust with cost of living, not only for staff, but also for our bills, our utility bills and our gas bills and things like that that go up year over year. So it's, when you think about all of that goes into this, to be able to hold steady is a testament to our staff and their ability to adapt, their ability to be more efficient and keep the village moving forward. Page 3 gives you a summary of the taxes. It's a lot of information, but on your own you can see the other contributing jurisdictions to our tax rate, and kind of gives you the total tax bill. I don't have the total yet. I have all the other taxing jurisdictions. I don't have the school state credit from which I get from the state. And typically that doesn't come out till probably about a week from now, and then that will give us our complete total tax rate. We're looking probably as a whole for it to be down over $2 in the Ashwaubenon School District, just under $2 in West Pier. The general fund as a whole starts on page 7, where we summarize the revenues, expenditures. Really, it's a lot of status quo, if you will. Again, services are staying the same. We're seeing revenue increases in areas. Room tax revenue has gone up significantly over the past few years, primarily with the addition of 2 newer hotels in the area have helped. We're seeing different increases. We've seen state aids at least hold steady now. There were a number of years where transportation aid and other aids were going down. Those have improved over the last 2-3 years, where they've held flat and even gone up in some instances. License and permitting, we expect that to probably increase, but we stayed conservative and left it relatively flat. We moved it up last in years past. We've bumped some things up a little bit. We've got a lot of construction going on, so that draws in a lot of that revenue, and a lot of residential owners are coming in with more and more permitting as well. So overall revenue side of things, the other big change is on interest. Seeing interest rates come back significantly, so able to readjust some of our investments to get higher rate of returns. So that's actually up $105,000 in the budget. So I would not be surprised to see that go up even a little bit more, but again, not knowing where rates will be in 15 months from now. So always actively looking at improving that as well. One of the area of concerns in the budget, where a little bit of a reduction in revenue is the cable TV franchise revenue. That is, we get a portion of the cable franchise fees from the state. Also, things like AT&T Uverse are in there. The concern is, are people still buying cable? And less people, I think, are subscribing to that. So that may be a revenue stream that slowly dwindles over time as people switch over to other mediums and use less and less of those services. So, but overall, revenues are strong. We also were able to build in, not that we had, we had to, we get a reimbursement from our Tif Districts for our time, our administrative services. Now that those are more in running themselves, we cut back a little bit of how much we were getting back from that. That was a concern at the Joint Review Board last year by some of the taxing jurisdictions, that maybe we needed to start looking at that, and we knew that eventually, we don't spend as much time as we normally would. You spend time with TIF issues, I spend a lot of time, I do a lot of the reporting, there's a lot of work, but over time that slowly dwindles away when TIF starts to run itself in some ways, and it's not as, there's not as much effort, if you will, there. So again, that's another area we were able to actually reduce the revenue stream there, yet maintain our tax rate. From the expense side, really, one of the big items was adding a new position in the Park and Recs, specifically in the community center, to help with maintenance needs, not only at that facility, but we're able to use part of that position to help clean this building, which would help reduce some of our contracted services costs. We were able to reduce contracted services to help aid in that position. Also assist potentially with some park maintenance, forestry type work as needed. And we'll use next year really to better define that. But the primary need was the community center that staff over there was finding they're spending their time doing a lot of cleaning there when that's really not what we want them doing. So that's a big plus to add that position. That position was, I believe, in 2005 or 2006, when Mr. Elfie retired at that time. We'd never replaced it. So that was a position we used to have long ago, but demands have changed with a lot of areas. So other than that, really, the expense side as far as departments, there isn't really much change within that as far as, non-personnel costs. We run pretty lean within all of those areas, and like I said, that's the staff working hard day in, day out to eliminate items that they don't need, if you will. So, any questions, any thoughts? It's a real high overview.
Any questions about the whole budget or just
Well,
that?
where do you want to go from there? Do you want to then go village board and start there and check the page off and move to the next one? I believe the last year, or maybe the last 2 years, we just kind of stopped here and people started firing out questions that they had, or we would just, I think the clerk will just kind of lead us through, page here, any questions? No, move to the next one. And that's kind of how we would do that, so I'll leave that up to you. Otherwise, I can just talk all night.
Oh,
Easy now, you're not Doug, no, just easy now.
I think he wants a report on the stormwater sanitary district or something, Doug. I'm sure that's what he wants.
If there's no
Okay.
questions, you can accept the motion to approve as amended.
and maybe just a couple other items from an employee perspective. Overall in the budget, there's a 2.25% increase for employee salaries. Again, those are dependent upon performance reviews for everybody except for sworn public safety officers. But any administrative type positions that would affect. In addition, from the previous salary study, we did that step increase in July. The remaining amounts, we've broken that up. So depending on what the position has for a remaining increase to get to their salary goal that you reviewed back in July, that was divided in two. So they'd get, their next step would be half of that amount for January 1st, and then the next remaining amount would be, next half of that would be July 1st. So that essentially it's a three-step process for those wage increases. In addition, you previously approved a whole bunch of changes to health insurance. So there are modifications to all those premium rates on both the HSA side and the PPO side. Dental has remained the same, but on the HSA side, we also have built in 4 months of premium forgiveness. So we would be specifically not allocating funds for those last 4 months of the year on that, because otherwise we will likely overfund the HSA side. So that is in this budget. It's difficult to see it from a line item because every person's salary, their FICA, their WRS, their health benefits, dental, all that stuff is kind of built in one by one, and they're across various lines within the budget. So my salary shows up in the administrative portion, but I have a portion of my salary that's in water utility and stormwater and a few different line items. So there's not necessarily a good place for us to gather that up. So I just wanted you guys to be aware of those changes are all within this budget as well.
Do you want to go through it department by department, or?
Department, that's usually, I think that's usually what we do, is department by department.
Can I ask a question about on the revenues on page 7? Your intercompany, or intergovernmental, it's up like 12%. How confident are you in that number? And I know it made, 2 increases are 2 big line items, the personal property aid and expenditure restraint program.
Sure, so what happened, the state basically eliminated personal property tax, if you will, but they then created an aid payment back to the municipalities for what they determined was how much revenue you would lost in your tax revenue. So they were making each community whole. So when I run what the manufacturing portion of personal property that was reduced and ran it through the tax table, if you will, it was $184,000 of tax revenue that we lost because of that. Therefore, they're giving us that as an aid payment back. So it's really somewhat of a cost shift, if you will, between the two, that one. The expenditure restraint program is, the state basically allows you, or they almost somewhat reward communities who don't have large budget increases year over year. So if you maintain a budget level within a certain percentage point, and there's a little bit of a formula in that, they'll say, hey, you're getting expenditure restraint money back because you restrained your budget a little bit from exceeding where you needed or could have gone potentially from prior years. So we didn't raise up very much from 17 to 18, so we get a payment in 19. It's always a year lag. So there's a formula that runs every year, and those percentages I think change every year as well. And so that's really we got it back in 2016, if you see in the book. We got it back then, it was 31,000. So it's based on how much it went up, what percentage points, and then they run a percentage of percentages, and that's how you get a number. So I can't guarantee that next year we get it because I don't really know the formula yet, how they calculate it next year. They may change that. Well, last year it used to be 3%, maybe now it's only those that were under 2% change or something like that. And so those are the two big new pieces within there. There's a DOJ grant of $30,000. What that is there's an offsetting cost to that in the public safety overtime line. So it's just something, we hadn't budgeted it in prior years, but you can see public safety will go out and get a speed enforcement grant or an alcohol enforcement grant. And so they have overtime that's incurred. They submit their overtime to the state and get reimbursed. So this is a wash. That additional 30, there's an additional 30,000 in overtime cost to offset that. It's just a better budgeting reflection of the true costs that have come in.
Thank you.
So then, Greg, what is the other then underneath the local aids?
Other is the 25,000 is a aid payment from the Oneida tribe for ambulance services to the casinos, sorry. I'm not sure if it was the hotel or the casinos. So we have a separate agreement with them to provide ambulance services to their casino. They don't pay taxes, so it's kind of a payment in lieu of taxes, if you will. But it's through a service agreement, so it's...
Was that agreement, why the big increase on that?
We had not had that noted in the budget in prior years. If you look under the 2018 forecast column, on that same row,
Yep.
144.5, that's why that's so big. They've made payment for the last 4 or 5 years, and now we've got it back in the budget.
It was not an issue where they were not making payment. It was a payment, it was an issue we did not send them the invoice. I don't want that mistaken. That
Right.
in any way they were shirking their duties. It was, unfortunately, when we set it up, we did the agreement, we just,
I think it was there were 2 agreements, and I think there was thought that it was within the same agreement. We have the other Oneida service agreement, and then there was this other one down on the side, and I think there was thought that they were in the same, so the Oneidas never got billed. And so therefore, it was caught up as we started looking at renewing.
As soon as they were made aware of it, they
They paid.
issued us a check for all the back payments, so. Okay. Any other questions on any of that? So now we're going to administration. Or are we done with that?
Page 15,
and 16.
15 and 16.
General comment on all these tabs, first of all, is in the past budgets in each of these sections, we've had requests that were denied. And I don't see any of that in these tabs.
page
You know-
14, on page 14 is a list of the modifications. So these are the, if you look at the top, those are items that were removed from the budget. There were 3 items removed from the budget. One was the Argonne playground equipment. There was a request to put that there. The discussion came around, let's just hold off a year and figure out, maybe a potential alternative plan for that park. So that was a reduction. That would have been in the capital projects fund. All of these actually would have been in the capital projects funds. The other one was the Albinger Park accessibility path, 10,000. And then the adjusting the lake sunshades was a request to buy 3. And we said, let's just buy 1 each year so that we don't have in 5 years or 10 years, have to buy 3 in the same year again. Let's just kind of spread it out. Those are the 3 items. The other items listed on this page, what we did is we have excess funds this year, so we wanted to allocate a lot of the capital project requests that were in the budget against those funds. And then also at the bottom section, reclassing to the United Service Agreement funds some of those costs that were moved into those dollars. And that's something we normally do every year. We kind of move things around. So again, not a lot of cuts this year. Yeah, in years past there have been. Other years we've had a lot of little things and moving parts. Not so much this year. I think, again, a testament to what was proposed.
We also went through an extensive, each department head had to develop, we already had it, it's just that they had to go through it more thoroughly and extend it out in terms of a capital improvement, capital project, capital equipment plan, well out into the future. Generally, we've had that for 5 years, and there's some other high points out there, but it's more difficult in some departments and others, such as Park and Rec, in terms of playground equipment and a lot of miscellaneous items, but they did go through that exercise this year. And then some of the magic you don't see actually came from Greg in terms of the budget tool itself, is kind of pulling from those capital equipment plans into the budget themselves. And Greg did a lot of magic in terms of the technology and making it much easier for each of the department heads to enter their budget information and having those things tied together.
That's good.
It was
Awful lot of that money went to public safety.
Yeah, the big thing for public safety this year was that scuba thing. It's a breathing apparatus, but that has to be replaced this year. So I always say, unfortunately, public safety has a lot of things that expire, so we don't.
And most of those items were, last year we really hammered through kind of smoothing those out over a longer period of time. So that's kind of a replacement cycle that you'll see a lot of that stuff on there every year. A lot of those replacement pieces.
Mary, don't say things like that to somebody my age, for God's sake. Jeez.
Well, public safety, I've had my house broke into, had to use the police side, had a fire in a dumpster, had to use the fire side, had my husband with a heart attack, had to use the rescue squad, so I was told I was a drain on our public safety system.
So most of this was for you, for goodness sake. Holy man, okay, all right. Just a comment, no big deal.
Yep. Okay. Any more questions on that?
No. Yeah, so the Argonne Park playground equipment that was axed, that was approved by Park Board, is that right? Right. But it's getting axed at this level.
Well, we're not axing it. We just don't, I went on Brown Dog, and I looked at where that park is, the Argonne Park, compared to Canterbury Park, compared to Titletown Park, and compared to Gillis Park. So you have a lot of parks right in that area. I don't know that Argonne Park is going to remain exactly what it is. And that's why, until we have that discussion, until we figure that out, I don't want to stick, almost $50,000 worth of equipment into a park that possibly might change. We've got a few ideas rolling around, thinking of different ways to enhance that park without just putting in the same stuff that's there.
Yeah,
So
that brings up an interesting thought. You've got three parks that I can picture within view of Titletown. How much of the park activity is going to Titletown? Do we have any idea on that?
No, but that's, like I said, that's gonna be in this next year, that'll be a discussion point that we'll have to figure out.
Titletown's not complete yet, so part of it's seeing how it's built out, particularly with the residential component, but, you may see some of, if there's any families in there, they may push the other way, it just depends. I think it's sort of let's take a more global look of what's happening in that area and what are some things we can do. And like Mary said, we have some grandiose ideas that we might like to just kind of bounce around and give it a little bit more thought than just do the same thing before we invest $50,000 in new equipment. Let's give it more thought, that's all.
Okay.
Rex?
Not off the table completely, just let's give it some time to explore.
Right, because I get questions on, that's part of my area, and I get questions from, the residents, what's going on with it. Rex does they do a great job, trying to maintain what we have there, but it is pretty old and tattered, and it is pretty visible to traffic, I think, in that area with Argonne Street in general, but then you get the Packer weekends, special event weekends, and there's a lot of traffic that even parks there.
Did you want to say something, Rex?
Well, I always have stuff to say when we're talking about parks. I will say that 2 out of the 3 of those parks do have playground programs, and the numbers in those parks actually increased over what we had the last several years. So the playground programs, the kids visiting the parks that we do have are higher in number. Argonne Park does have that soccer field that's also used by the Ashwaubenon lacrosse organization, used by some practices for AYS. So they're all still well used, but we're certainly open to look at what other potential uses could be happening in the park.
It's not nixed off the table, it's just, until we get it figured out, we just don't know what we're gonna do exactly, so. Okay. Any more questions on admin? Okay. Next page is Municipal Court.
So we'll have adjustments in terms of the judge's salary into that by the next budget, just so you're aware, but I don't think we have to do anything right now. You don't have to make a motion to change that part.
What page are you on, Mary?
Well, nothing would happen this year anyway.
Page 18 is the municipal court, if you're
Nothing would
new to
happen
that.
in 19 anyway. Stays the same.
More or less, their budget stays the same from prior years.
Okay. No more comments. We'll move on to the Clerk Treasurer.
Mary, why don't we go by section, just to see if anybody's got any questions on them? I mean, it's pretty, I don't know.
I would agree.
I think we have to go page by page myself.
You do?
We don't.
Oh, I agree.
Okay, you tell us a page then.
Yeah.
So
You
you're
go by-
looking at general government?
Yeah, general government, and then go to public safety, just take the section. We got a question about it. I hope everybody's read it or went through it at least, so that, we got a question, we should have a question on it.
Isn't that- Okay, I'm on page 19,
Yeah.
right? No?
I would just.
So you're looking at village board administration, which starts on page 15 through general government, which is page 35. So those sections,
Right.
which would be the clerk, treasurer, assessor, finance, IT, building inspection, legal, and village hall maintenance and general government.
If we have any questions on any of that, otherwise then go to public safety and just take that whole section.
Yep.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions on that first chunk that we just went through? Okay. Then we're in public safety. Any questions on public safety?
We, I understand, did not get any new cars this year.
We didn't in well, the ones, we previously had a meeting on to talk about the getting the 2018s, that our order was not able to go through. So in the budget, though, those cars were getting pre-ordered, but essentially for 2019. But we are getting 2019 vehicles now. So the same number of vehicles are in that you previously approved in whatever month that was.
It's just that we have to pay the higher
August.
price, right?
Yeah,
Chief?
okay.
So it's 2 vehicles in this budget.
Oh, there
public
are two,
safety.
okay,
Yep. Yes.
okay.
Correct.
So they're not lost, they're just a different price, different year. Different make and year,
Yep.
model year would be the word. Same budget.
There's no increase in the number of employees either, and I would think with Titletown District expanding as quickly as it is, assumption was that they would need additional officers. I know you requested a study to be done, a 5-year projection, which makes a whole lot of sense, because I think we shouldn't or ignore that district as far as additional police for that area.
It's really about monitoring that call volume and how the village overall is changing, and staffing levels, and all of that kind of ties into one.
Yeah. There is no additional personnel in this budget, but that doesn't mean that there aren't going to be any in years to come. We just have to wait and
Correct.
check out the study and see
We've
what we
added
got.
2 in the last, probably 5 years, I think.
We've gotten two new officers in 5 years, Chief?
More than
We had the direct enforcement officer added a couple of years ago, then 2 years ago, we were approved for the 51st officer position.
Okay. So. Okay. Any questions on public safety?
Just a comment, Mary, you brought it up at the meeting that with a large number of 5- and 6-story buildings, we will not need additional equipment either.
Correct.
Correct. What the equipment we have would service that, correct?
Correct. Yep. Because, and Aaron said it, we have the standpipes and all each floor, and we don't have to have, you explain
Yeah.
it, Chief, you're better at that.
Yeah, any of your, what we call high-rise buildings, which is three stories or more, have a standpipe and all have the new modern sprinkler systems in them. The one thing that you will see in the capital budget plan for vehicles in the years to come is our aerial platform, which is it's our 100-foot ladder, which is over 20 years old, and the replacement on that, the manufacturer recommendation is about 25 years of age mark. So that is something that will be coming due here in the near future. We do have a couple different options with that. We can go out and purchase a brand new one, which is probably about 1 to 1.1 million now. And there's another way to do it. It's called a refurb. And basically, they take our existing truck and they go and take it down and put all the new federal mandates on the truck, and you can get another 10 years of service out of it on average, which we work with a contractor now for annual maintenance, and we're waiting for that to go down there this year yet for its annual maintenance, and they're to give us an estimate of what a refurb would be. And we're also talking to the city of De Pere, because their ladder truck is about the same age, is whether or not we can work together with one truck, or do both municipalities need an aerial ladder. We're not growing by borders, but we're growing up. We've got many 5-6 stories complex going in a dense area in and around Titletown, and you can see the development downtown De Pere. They've got some plans of doing multi-story buildings down there as well. So both municipalities are going upward, and so these resources are going to be needed here in the future.
Okay. Any more comments on public safety?
So next section is street department, which goes through engineering, street administration, garage, street maintenance, curb gutter, snow and ice, traffic control, street lighting, sidewalk maintenance, school district maintenance, labor for others, and transit. Then also the sanitation, which is garbage, recycling, landfill, weed control, wood chipping. Just a point of reference again on this, we have the whole crew back there that kind of works their time and efforts through all those pieces. There are a few individuals that are, like the mechanics, for example, that are specifically in the garage budget. And there are a couple individuals that are assigned to the garbage or recycling budgets. The rest of the guys, we kind of allocate their time based on prior trends or projected projects throughout those other departments. So as a whole, it's the same number of people who would get this, the normal pay increase type of thing. So if you see variances within wages here and there, it just could be that we had maybe one year we had a ton of snow, so we obviously had to allocate more time there. We don't anticipate having the April snowfall every year, hopefully, but so, or there may just be one area where we did a lot of extra work on curb and gutter, for example, so they had a higher cost that year. But as a whole, it's the same group of individuals back there handling all those responsibilities.
On this public works area here, today I called Allison about this because I'm going to bring it up here, I guess, is that one of the things that I've talked about in the past is wayfind signs for the village of Ashwaubenon, updated ones, and maybe for the services that we offer in the village. Basically, it was recommended by me and some of the other people that serve on committees about wayfind signs. And what we talked about is possibly bringing it to Public Works next meeting because it's not in this budget. And I think next meeting we'll bring it forward.
Bring it forward next meeting to decide if we want to do it from we can hash out the pros and cons of doing that at that meeting. It's a rather, potentially could be a sizable expenditure, but my suggestion to Mark was that we would look at 2017 excess funds or our excess stadium sales tax revenue, because that can be used for economic development purposes for which that would potentially be categorized. So we don't necessarily need it in this budget. It doesn't foreclose the possibility of doing it if that's what the wishes of the board are. We can use those other funds, would probably be more appropriate and allow us some time to plan that if we were to move forward with locations and how it would be done and all that kind of thing.
Just to plant the seed so everybody knows what we're talking about is like with the new past referendums with the aquatic center, the PAC, new community center, new Bullfrog Stadium, all those type of things is when people enter the community, they don't necessarily know that we have all these things. So it's a way of directing people and letting them know that they're here at different locations and how to get to those locations. Even if they're not going to that venue, if you will, that it tells them, wow, this is a pretty progressive community. Let's take a look at it once and see if maybe we want to check out the aquatic center or the Bullfrog Stadium or whatever it might be.
Yeah, we tossed around the pros and cons of all the wayfinding signs, so I think it's good. Bring it to the committee and we'll hash it out.
Good.
Okay, any questions on engineering, street department? Doug has a comment.
There's just one item I want to bring forth, and it can be brought up at the next village board meeting also, but we didn't see it as that big of an item. But we send out each year the calendar, the Public Works calendar for the year, where there's different pickups, tells you what week your garbage or recycling, the spring cleanup, the fall leaf pickup, Christmas tree chipping, the annual presentation by the Public Works Director of the stormwater utility information, all of that good stuff. One of the items that we've run into the past probably 3 to 5 years has been the delivery of our waste. When we go through and pick up garbage from everybody in the village, and we have to send our trucks out to the transfer station, Where we're running into an issue is, as all of you know, it's the first full week of each month. Everybody in the Green Bay area, every community picks up large rubbish the first full week of every month. And if you drive out to the transfer station, you will see lines going out of that building, and we have crews sitting out there for on average, about an hour to an hour and 45 minutes waiting to dump. We've been contacting, and we kept tally on it this year. The third week of the month is almost a ghost town out there. So if we were to switch from the first full week of the month to the third full week of the month, we'd be able to get our crews out there, dump, get rid of the material, get back out onto our streets, picking up more material during that time. So as part of our mailer this year, instead of putting this in our utility bill, we were thinking of sending it with a letter out to our residents, just making that change so that we have more ability to get our guys back out on the roads here rather than waiting out at the compost site. Or at the transfer station site. Didn't see it as a big issue, but I wanted to bring it up during budget time that if somebody said that's going to throw off, because it is a change, it goes from the first full week to the third full week, that is a change, but we'll get it out in a mailer to everybody to update everybody. We talked about it during budget a little bit.
Great idea.
But bringing it up here that if it causes some heartburn, we can take a committee meeting or a board meeting to discuss it further.
The trouble is, everyone wants progress, Doug, but nobody wants change.
So.
But you got to do it sometimes. I think it's a great idea.
So when you see that come out, or if you get questions on it, that's one of the
You're going to
items.
send a letter out on that, did you say?
Yeah, we're going to put a letter with it, and we'll send it out. Instead of with the utility billing that we do each year, we'll probably do a separate billing, because later on, there's a discussion in utility, as I think you approved at the last budget meeting, there's a billing services change coming up in 2019, and we're going to be putting some media out in the utility bills on that, some letters in the utility bills on that. So we want to give that opportunity to the utilities, and we'll have a separate one for this.
You know, I think what might throw people off is the third full week. You know, that might, because even sometimes the first full week is, so if you're going to send a letter out, I would suggest to you that maybe you want to do it month by month and actually put the dates, the weeks in there that you're going to do that. Then there's no question about which week it is.
Yep, and that's what's on this calendar. We highlight the week that we're going to be out. So
Great
we'll send
idea.
that along with the
Okay.
Isn't the third week always a full week? Why are we
Third
getting?
full week.
Huh?
The third full week. Because you might have a partial week, and then a full week, and a full week, but that's not the third full week. It's
That's where the confusion comes in, Gary. You're right, yeah.
Doug, you said that's going to be a special letter.
It's going to be special, all right.
Thanks, Allison. A separate letter is the correct word.
Yes.
Sign Greg's name to it. Just sign Greg's name to it. I think it'd be better that way.
There is a lot of questions on that, you know, when do I do this, when do I do that, on that particular subject, so.
And that's kind of the hope. That's kind of the hope, because we get some of those calls also, and that was
You
kind of the
do?
hope by doing
Okay.
a separate mailing, that maybe that'll catch a little more attention than a fold
Okay,
fold
good,
up in
thank
the
you.
utility bill.
Good idea.
Yep, save us a lot of time with our guys just sitting out there in trucks. Okay. Any more questions on the engineering street section? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to Park and Rec. And that goes. Okay. Okay, that goes through page 81. Anybody have any questions on this?
89.
89? Oh, we're doing the community center with
Community
that?
center and then
And the
forestry.
forestry? One question, Tim, what's the name of my trees again?
Repair.
Thank you.
Same as last year.
What is that reference to, just so?
Every person that goes into Cheesecake Heaven comes and asks me what kind of trees are on Oneida Street along there, because they just, in the fall, they are the most beautiful trees. And everybody asks me, and I'm like, there's some kind of a pear tree, but we don't ever get pears. So,
Then it can't be much of a
So what is the
pear
name
tree.
of it?
it's an autumn blaze something pear.
Wait. Mental variety.
Calorie?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Tim.
You're welcome.
Okay. Does anybody have any other questions for the Park, Rec, and Forestry Department? Community Center, we were there this morning for the Halo meeting, and everybody, again, this is the second time we've hosted Halo there, and they just think that that community center is just beautiful. So it is a great facility.
What room did you meet in?
The big one.
Oh, man.
The one next to the Ken Bukowski room?
The Ken
Yeah,
Bukowski.
that one, yeah.
The Ken Bukowski room was,
Yeah, yeah.
was
Storage room?
occupied, so we couldn't have that one.
Isn't that the storage room, Alice?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, any questions on,
I've seen that one of the things at the community center is that we hosted over 350 events there this year. That is amazing.
over 350 events? Yeah, somebody
Yeah,
asked me.
those are the paid rentals, that well over 1,500 total events, 350 paid rentals, which are typically on the weekends. There are a good number of business rentals during the day as well.
No
Yeah.
marketing needed.
Yeah, it's a beautiful facility. So, okay, any questions on that section?
So the next section is Health and Human Services. It's just our animal control budget. Just the
Is there any plans in there for smoke,
removal?
the turkey?
Oh, Smoky.
Okay.
Mark took a picture of him, he was by the dentist's office today, so.
He was extradited to another jurisdiction.
I think he chased my family at the dentist office the other day, actually.
Did he really?
Chase him back
He
across.
did, and my little one was left in the car crying, and he sat right outside the door and watched him. That's pretty
Wow.
funny.
Wow,
I seen them picking stones out of tires today, so,
Yeah,
parked cars.
Wow.
really?
Yep.
pretty funny.
Yeah.
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 Okay, any questions on our animal control or economic development?
I do have a question, and it's really not like a big deal, but Humane Society, what Humane Society do we give to, or how does that work?
That has to do when we pick up stray animals and we deliver them out to the east side, which is now the Green Bay, or Wisconsin Humane
Wisconsin
Society.
Humane Society.
Yes. So that we get charged for the animals that we admit into there.
Gotcha.
You know, now that you're on animal control, it might be a good time to bring this question up. Several years ago, we had issues with deer. I'm not hearing anything anymore.
Oh, I have.
You are? The right people are not talking to me?
Yeah.
It's
Because-
either they like them or they don't like them. I mean, it's.
But are
your
they a
fault.
nuisance like they were when we created, next week we're going to be shooting them here.
I think it's less than it used to be. We still have, where I live, we've
Yeah.
got a creek across the street from us, and I know one of my neighbors, he has some deer coming through his yard, but they don't come across the street to where we live. I never see them, but I don't get complaints like I used to, that's for sure.
Yeah, I'm not hearing them neither. There's a few people I know who live similar to your description, Ken. They're saying they're not seeing them like they used to see them.
They're still there. I live close to you, Ken, and there are small groups of them still around. But Gary, as you said before, I don't think there's as many. There still is the urban deer hunt, which is currently going on all the way through, I believe, the end of January, where you can still hunt deer in the village with a bow or crossbow, bow and arrow or crossbow. If you go on the village website, go under Park and Recreation, you can look under Deer and Turkey Management. And we have the DNR rules and links if someone is interested in doing that. You can still do it on private property, not within the parks, but on private property, as long as you get landowner's permission is 50 yards from within your hunting spot. If they give you the okay, then you can hunt from a height, and you can bow hunt using, or hunt using a bow and crossbow, bow or crossbow. So I think that's still going on occasionally, not as much as was before. We've got very few, if any. I don't know if we've gotten any telephone calls this year on reported culling of any of the deer. But it's still able to be done.
Okay. Have you gotten any numbers this year of people getting one?
I have, no one has reported to me that we've gotten phone calls, and usually the staff let me know if we've gotten those calls.
Okay. I was just wondering if anybody else had heard or seen any.
Next section.
So next section is the special revenue funds. Just briefly, special revenue funds are those that are designated for typically a specific purpose and have, for the most part, alternative revenue streams. For example, park development has the park impact fee that is collected from development within the village, and therefore there's rules around how those funds are spent. We've got the employee retirement fund is separated over there for fund for only those payouts for retired employees who have accumulated accrued balances in sick, comp, or vacation, things like that. So these funds, the United Service Fund is in here. So that is through an agreement that we have with the tribe, and basically in payment in lieu of taxes, if you will. And that's where we have the list of projects that were included in there. And then there are items like the K-9, DARE, and Citizens Academy are located over here to help. A lot of those revenue sources are either through donations, through parking revenue from Packer games, or any other source, and therefore their budget's typically based on the amount of revenue they can pull in. That's what they use to spend. We do have one in their DARE program. They do bring in taxes. That is to cover overtime. They do incur overtime in some instances, so therefore that's to cover that type of cost.
Okay, we've had conversations, we've brought it up about the K-9 program. Why can't we include that in the budget as not a special revenue?
It was requested to be put aside as a separate fund, and so this would be the proper place to put it.
It's the donations themselves
donations
that are in
themselves.
there. It's the expenses that in large part are already in the budget, the officer, the vehicle. There are a few items that we are still in discussion.
But if it's an expectation of the village to have this program, why have it as a special fund?
It's purely from the donation aspect to try and keep that separate. I mean, I think initially when this program was set up and the donations were received, it was more about the initial layout in terms of buying a vehicle, getting the dog, training the dog. But that's, and then kind of having an endowment, if you will, into the future. Those are the subject of additional discussions going forward, but yes, in large part, the expenditures are in the actual budget itself.
The reason at the time, and I had checked with the auditors, was the premise of the program was donations were going to drive that program specifically for the dog, and that the vehicle was donated at the time. And therefore, it was to track those, to ensure that those donations were going to the proper use and have clear and concise reporting, that it would be a separate fund in itself, so that you couldn't lose some supply costs, get buried in with your operational stuff. There's a clear and separate segregated reporting. Just like park development funds, when Rex talks about his projects, there's very specific reasons why what projects can be spent in park development versus capital project funds. So it's a similar type of mindset, that since it was going to be going forward with donated dollars as well, the auditors said you should really track that separately so that you can clearly show that it's separated from.
What I'm saying is, if it's an expected program, do you have to have it as a special fund? I mean, if we're gonna maintain the K-9 program, no matter what, if there's enough donations or not.
Well, that's the board's direction. At the point in time, that's why it was created, because at that time, the board wanted to keep it separately as well, to
Well,
track it. But you're right.
No,
it
the
doesn't.
kickoff, the initial expenditures of buying the vehicle, buying the dog, training the officer were taken out of those donated funds.
But
You are
if-
correct in terms of going forward, those funds, or the expenditure funds are in the budget. Right now, we have about $5,000 to $10,000 that we need to see a budget for and see what those are those reoccurring expenses. There are expenses that are flowing through the K-9 fund that relate to fundraising. And kind of churning over those dollars we need to isolate things that are specific to the K-9. Like we have insurance that on the dog.
Why can't
That's
that be
been
in the,
coming
why
out
can't
of
that be in the budget though?
It should be, you are correct. But it's related to other personnel issues that we have not resolved yet. So therefore, it has not been done. It has been requested. It did not happen.
So next year, I mean, can it get absorbed into the regular budget?
Yes.
Thank you.
It wouldn't, it's, right.
As long as there's no donation,
What?
as long as there's no donations for it?
And they have donations, they do have donations in there, but I think it's part of developing a budget for what happens with it. So what you see in, what's not happening there versus what's happening, say, in park development. Park development has those funds coming in from park impact fees, and then there's a budget developed. Rex comes forward each year with what are the projects he's gonna do, that's built into the budget. What we're not seeing right now is a budget in terms of specifically what are those expenditures that are coming forward for the K-9 program, and that's something we're still working on. And so you're correct, we need to work on that. Some of the other ones in terms of like DARE liaison, some of those are the funds that come in and that's what they'll spend out, but it's not necessarily able to be budgeted. Or like park department receives a donation for a tree or for a bench, then it just came in and then it went out specifically to that. We don't know if we're gonna get a donation, and we don't buy a tree or buy a bench if we don't need to, type of thing. So there's a kind of a myriad of different types of funds in here, and some of them we've tried to create specific to programs just so we can kind of better identify what those costs are for that.
Out of curiosity, if that fund goes away, and this would not happen, but let's say I decided I wanted to give $10,000 to the K-9 fund, can you, if it's embedded in the budget, can you still accept private donations?
Anybody
Yes.
can donate for any purpose. Legally, we have to spend the money on what that purpose was designated for. So yes, you can still have that. Typically, on a normal, like the point of a park bench, we have a separate fund. We don't budget anything because we don't know if we're ever going to get a donation. So you come and say, I would like to donate $500 for a park bench. It goes into its own fund. It doesn't go in our general fund because that has to be spent on a park bench or amenity for that park bench. Same thing would hold true then going forward with that. If you came in and said, I want to give $10,000 for K-9, we would probably put that into that donation fund and say, okay, we have to spend it on something related to K-9. It wouldn't go in the general operation budget.
Okay, thank you.
And that's,
Sorry, I don't have $10,000 to give right now, though.
We'll keep working on it.
Yeah.
Okay. Debt service fund.
So debt service fund, I didn't say when I first started, when we create that levy amount, that $12,548,000, the first step in the budget process is to cover our debt. So this is all the debt that we have out on the books. It's listed it's color coordinated on page 109. The top section that isn't highlighted is our general levy. That's the general debt on, so we had half of Oneida Street and some other unfunded pension liability that goes way back. That was something we had to do with the state. And then Clipstein remediation, things like that, Cormier Road. So there's portions of that's covered with the general levy dollars. So that top part, the blue, the green, and the orange are TIF 3, 4, and 5 respectively. And so that's all debt related to those TIF districts. And the TIF districts actually transfer money into this debt service fund to cover that debt. That is not, the debt in the blue and green and orange is not covered with general tax levy dollars.
We're in good shape, though, we're, with
We
the
had
TIF?
Correct.
a good amount of debt actually come off this year, so
Okay.
we can't change any of that, so we might as well just go to the next one.
So capital project funds, we've got 4 major funds. I'll make one quick note here. We got our street construction fund, village building fund, park and recreation fund. And the public safety fund has always been there, but we've always, there's a shift this year to get all those capital items into this fund versus into the general operational budget, if you will. So park and rec, all their equipment sits in this fund. It's just kind of a cleanup, if you will. But overall, the street construction fund, we did, like I mentioned earlier, we added $25,000 there, and our plan is to continue to add $25,000 for the next 4 or 5 years to get that up to a higher level to be able to continue on with the level of street repaving that needs to get done. Village building fund, we're trying to replenish with $25,000 a year over time. We've done a lot of projects over the past few years, and so we would like to get that fund balance up a little bit higher to just to handle future needs that are coming down the road. Those are large ticket items. And then we also have our Tif districts in here. These are, the numbers in there are kind of off of our ongoing cash flow. Any major Tif projects have either come to the board already or will come to the board. Those are not something that we just decide we're going to do. And so there's obviously a lot of implications with that, with debt, if there's any debt issued on there, the type of revenue stream that that's going to bring in, and so on and so forth. So those are constantly evolving as development grows within those districts.
Greg, you mentioned several times we're adding $25,000 for pavement of streets. Is that because of the cost of paving is going up, or are we going to add additional miles to repave streets?
Yes, I would defer that to Doug to give a little more detailed description.
That's due to the increasing cost in paving, and we told the line for a number of years with 500,000. When I first started here back in 2000, it was $500,000 a year, and the village had a number of streets, especially in the southern part of the village. The entire industrial park was new at that time, so that $500,000 a year dipped for a number of years at budget time to cover some other areas. What that does is it brings more streets needing to be paved. Now, when it's getting close to about 20 years since that time, where that amount of money used to pave all of our residential streets, we now have an industrial park to pave as well. So there's more mileage, but the cost of doing it has also increased during that time.
Okay. It's a question, of all these subjects in here, the roads is always a question, which we're very privileged to have good roads in the village of Ashwaubenon compared to some other communities. But, all right, I understand what you're saying.
That brings up a good point, Greg, I guess. With the revaluation and the reduction in mill rate and everything, how does that go, how does it affect the payback on these things? Do you restart the, you know, if it was at $5 and now it's down to $4.90, we don't have any increment there, or does that get recalculated?
For the TIF?
Yeah.
Well, all those values are altered as well, so it flows through. Yeah, it'll have a little bit of an impact. It's not as much. There's the tax calculation for TIF's a little bit different. It's based off of TID in and out and interim rates, and it gets a little goofy. But overall, the districts are fine. They're not going to take any big hits.
But they get reevaluated as well as where the starting point was, I guess?
No, the base value doesn't change on a TIF district. That's locked in. It's the incremental value.
Right.
Some of our, if you're like thinking more in terms of our particular development agreements, and we say, okay, you're going to develop $5 million of increment. In the actual development agreement, we've been changing that to say, okay, this is what your tax payment needs to be, because the value is gonna change and the tax rate is gonna change, but at the end of the day, we need X to cover debt associated with that project. So that revenue stream needs to be the same. So even though a project may be reevaluated and now it's worth more and the tax rate went down, their tax payment in all likelihood will be relatively similar at the end of the day.
Okay.
Okay. Our next. Enterprise funds.
Enterprise funds are utility funds, the water, sewer, and stormwater utilities. Just as a reminder, these funds act like a private business. So you see different terms in here. They are accounted for and are treated not the same as public. So when we do year-end reporting and financial reporting, these are completely separate, never merged with the government activities. So from a budgeting perspective, that's why they're reported separately. Not a lot of change, I don't think, internally as far as costs are, and pretty consistent capital planning. We are in the middle of a rate review, waiting back from the auditors. So I think we're anticipating some adjustment with the water rates.
Yeah, there'll be an adjustment. We haven't had a water rate adjustment since 2006. We're aiming to have a small one for next year and probably the next couple of years. The sewer utility end, I think, is going to be relatively flat. The large agreement met sewage projects are now complete, so all of that debt and all of those rate increases that were passed along to the communities are done. So that fund is stabilizing. But the water utility, there's been a couple of rate increases in the wholesale rate that we're going to have reviewed and see if there isn't a need for a small rate increase there.
Well, how is that operating loss made up? Is it made up somehow? The 644?
Sorry, what page are you on, Ken?
128.
Yeah, and that will be adjusted. The revenues from the water will likely be higher, so that'll cover. And then there may, like Doug said, I don't think it's sewer, but if it would call for something, I would anticipate the water is covered. And then usually, we're sometimes those treatment costs don't come in always as planned. So we'll monitor that closely. We have been year over year with the sewer as well. But the water revenues will be higher because this is at the old rates. We don't have the new rate structure in there yet.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Doug, paging through this under street sweeper, are we due for a new one already? Where are you? 144.
I think
No,
that's the actual work.
Correct. That isn't a purchase of a piece of equipment. That's actually the project. That's actually street sweeping. That's the work itself.
The person driving around.
Oh, the work itself.
Correct.
Okay, all right. It's costing us $100,000. Okay.
And that's correct, Doug, that's part of our requirements in terms of our stormwater permitting through the
Correct.
state. We have to do that.
Right.
Correct. Street sweeping is one of the items, along with building some of the ponds that you've seen over the years, for us to achieve our stormwater requirements through the DNR.
People think we just aimlessly drive around a street sweeper for fun.
The last sweeper that was purchased was designed for, help me out, it was not an ordinary street sweeper.
Yeah,
It was
called a regenerative.
DNR approved or some, whatever.
Yes, a regenerative air street sweeper. What it does is it captures.
I couldn't pronounce.
It captures all of the dust, or captures most of the dust, as in comparison to the old style, the Pelican street sweepers. And by having that piece of equipment, you get a higher percentage in terms of your DNR credit and meeting your goal.
Okay, all right.
Okay. Moving on to
Internal service
internal
funds.
service funds.
So internal service funds are items that essentially, like our insurance is self-funded. So the revenues that are in here are, they are the chargebacks to each of the departments. So as we went through all the department budgets, as Allison had said earlier, the health insurance, dental, each department based on the personnel is charged a portion for health and dental. That cost, the offset of that is the revenue. The revenue hits these funds, so that's where we're self-funded. And the expenditures in these areas are the costs of healthcare, the cost of dental, the cost to buy equipment. So dental, health, equipment replacement are all our vehicles. So again, what we do is if I buy a new piece of equipment, let's say it's $100,000, we pay cash, and then if it's a 10-year life, for 10 years, $10,000 is charged back to whatever the responsible department is, whether that's public safety or public works or wherever that is. That'll be an expense on the public works budget, if you will, and then a revenue stream of $10,000 each year in this budget. So that, in theory, after 10 years, you've built your money back up to buy the next piece, the replacement piece of equipment. And then you multiply that by the number of vehicles we have, and that's how this works. It just kind of keeps self-funding itself over time. And I should make a minor correction on page 151. Rex reminded me, the $111,000 lawnmower, that is not a, I retyped something and made a mistake. That's not a push behind. That's one of those big, massive lawnmowers. So I think I Googled it and then must have typed the wrong thing. So he was worried that we were buying a $111,000 push behind lawnmower.
Big push.
Well, that must come with a person to push it, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Any questions on this? Internal service funds. Okay,
So
that's the end of the
Tony,
budget book.
through osmosis,
Yep.
has told me that he has rectified his situation with the clerk treasurer salary, and he is comfortable with what you originally proposed. So if you would like to go back and redo that motion again, you could, can we redo that? Because now we're in the budget. Well, I suppose you still could, because it has to be amended in the budget. It was technically an earlier agenda item, but you're still okay. Okay, still okay.
Okay,
So-
so that original motion was $2,500 a year for 3 years. Correct?
For each year.
That
For each year.
is Correct.
Yes.
Correct,
So at the end of 3 years.
So we can remake that motion, is what you're saying?
correct. And then we would apply it to this budget. And then
Can we remake a different motion?
you can do whatever you want.
Motion back. Set aside.
How to do what now?
I don't know.
Oh, that'll be the first motion to bring it back? Okay, Mike is our Robert's Rules expert to my left here. He's telling me that we should make a motion to
Reconsider the
eliminate,
Set
or
aside.
to expunge the set-aside motion,
Reconsider there's kind of a motion to table to a date certain.
Whatever, yeah.
So, well, yes,
It wasn't
correct,
tabled,
set aside.
Set aside.
Yeah, we
Okay.
didn't table, we
that's-
set it
So
aside, so
we need a motion to reconsider the set-aside motion.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to reconsider the set-aside motion, which was the clerk's salary at $2,500.
No, that was to
That
wait till
comes
the
next.
November
That comes
27th
next.
meeting.
Set aside.
We got,
You're
We're setting
clearing up
aside
the
set
set
it
aside
Oh,
first.
okay.
Maybe that.
Oh, okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
all right.
Opposed? Okay, we're in the set-aside now.
No, now
Anybody-
you're in the actual motion for the salary,
You want to make it? or you
Set
want-
aside to set aside.
which
I'll
Greg
make a
is
motion that we
saying that the original
adjust
motion.
the clerk treasurer salary at $2,500 per year for the next 3 years, beginning what, January 1st?
Nope, it'd
May
be May
1st.
May,
1st.
I'm sorry, May 1st of 2019.
$2,500, May 1st of 19 for 2 years.
For
3 years.
Each of 3
Three,
years.
do I see 3 fingers?
3.
3, okay, all right, that's fine,
I'll
that's fine.
second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to increase the clerk treasurer's salary $2,500 a year for 3 years.
That was the original motion, right?
Right.
Right,
Correct.
right,
Right.
Everybody understand that? Any more
yep, we're with it.
discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Okay. One opposed.
Do you need a motion to approve the preliminary budget here for the time being, or?
That would be a good idea.
I'll make a motion that we approve the preliminary budget as presented.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the preliminary budget.
Is that as presented or as amended?
As amended, sorry.
Amended, yeah.
This will come in front of the board
Yep,
meeting next
27th.
2 weeks, whatever it is.
On the
Yeah, 27th we'll have a public hearing, and then the board will approve a resolution adopting this budget.
Okay, all right.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to approve the amended budget as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Okay,
Move to adjourn.
motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Good job.
Thank you to everybody.